Welcome to the Latin MedTech Leaders Podcast, a conversation with leaders who have succeeded or plan to succeed in Latin America. Please subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, etc. Today, our guest is Etienne Nichols. Yeah, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Nailed it. Yep.
Excellent. A medical device guru and mechanical engineer who loves learning and teaching how systems work together. So, Etienne, thank you for being in the show today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, great to be with you, Julio. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. Let's get started. So, Etienne, tell us about your experience or your journey to Latin America. How is it that you got involved with the region on a personal, professional level?
Yeah, so on a personal note, when I was in college, I had a really good friend of mine whose name was Juan. He was from Colombia, and I just remember he and I worked. When you're in engineering school, you work long hours, and then you get up early to go to work. It's just around the clock, and we would be at his house constantly. And his dad, who couldn't speak English to me, but he would always make the best milk and rice. I don't know what it was, but I said someday I'm gonna go to Colombia and I'm gonna eat this in the country. So that's my personal kind of like where I was like, oh, Colombia, I want to go there someday. Um, Professional, we have a few customers that I have personally worked with in different places in Latin America. One in Colombia, one in I believe in Brazil, but just a few customers that I've interacted with in Latin America as well.
Excellent. Very good. So, at the end, let's talk about trends that you see happening in the industry that are relevant to the business of doing studies in or commercializing innovation in Latin America. Please.
Yeah. So the thing that I go to when I think about, I mean, you almost have to look at it globally. It's not just, you can focus on one country over another, and Latin America certainly, obviously, is the focus today. But if you look at globally, what's happening? EUMDR has always been, or the European market has always been, go there first because it's a little bit easier to get to market, and then eventually you bleed over into North America and the rest of the world. That's changing with EUMDR, especially with deadlines. A lot of the industry has been expecting another shift or another delay to those requirements. And I don't think that's really a safe way to go. And so it's looking like now this pendulum has shifted. So now where people may have been trying to be, first in human in overseas, now it's looking like, America is one, North America, sure, but Latin America is even more appealing because of the increased timelines as far as first in human, some of these clinical trials, and then also some of the trends that you see as far as the cost. So both timeline and cost are hugely appealing when you look at Latin America compared to some of the other regions in the world.
Totally. Yes. What countries did you hear, or do you usually hear your clients talk about when they were thinking about early feasibility or first in human trials?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a specific country,
Okay,
that comes to mind as far as that goes. Lately, I've just been hearing about the shift more, away from the European market.
that's true. That's true. Um, and also, I would say that I just met with a sponsor, the CEO of a medical device company. Uh, it's a company out of Seattle, Washington, and it's just shocking how unsatisfied he is with the FDA ID approval process for an early feasibility study. And then the word he used was uncertainty. Uncertainty is the
Ah,
enemy of a startup. You cannot have uncertainty. You can have risk, of course, but not uncertainty. And there's so much uncertainty in Europe, of course, as you correctly said, and there's so much uncertainty in the US as well. So that's probably the main reason why companies are looking at other places like Colombia, etc., to do early feasibility work.
yeah, and I know, I mean, I see you, Julio, as kind of the expert as far as Latin America as a whole. There's certain things that I know about the different regions and different things, but I'd love to hear. I don't want to flip this around necessarily, but I'd love to hear some of the things like you would specifically say, hey, this region, maybe Colombia, just because
Yeah.
that has part of my heart there. Some of the things as far as the uncertainty, because I latched onto that word uncertainty.
Yeah.
Why would what are your thoughts as far as the flip side in Latin America?
Yes, yeah. The way it works, the approval process, the way it works in a country like Colombia, for example, and I'm Colombian as well, so I'm
Oh,
biased, and we do most of our work in Colombia. But I've analyzed pretty much the whole region, pretty much the whole region. I just finished an article about comparing the regulatory approval process in Colombia, Mexico, and Brazil. And it is, I mean, if you put the three countries together, the timelines, the process, I mean, the steps, the review cycles, and all that, I mean, it's just obvious that Colombia is perhaps the most appealing country and the country that offers the most certainty to these companies. And that's what they're looking for, without mentioning cost savings and patient recruitment potential because of the size of the country, the population. So I would say that Latin America is getting more and more mature. Countries like Colombia, like Chile, are really, really making efforts to become uh, knowledge economies versus uh, commodity exporting or agriculture exporting countries. And knowledge economies means that you have to somehow connect your industries to the world, especially the service industry. In the clinical research is a great, just a fantastic way of connecting a country to the world to high level of knowledge about innovation and all that. So yeah, I would say that Colombia is offering a lot more certainty, way more certainty than Europe or the
yeah,
United States right now.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a good summary.
All right. So let's continue. I heard that you guys did a great survey about the state of the industry. I'm just so thrilled to have you here and to speak about it. I mean, can you elaborate on that? What do
Absolutely.
you guys concluded after reading all those surveys answers? Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, we did do a survey. We called it the Quality Management and Product Development Survey, the 2022 State of MedTech. And there were several things that came out of it. I guess I should start by saying we interviewed 519 quality professionals. And so when I say 519, about 60% of those were quality and regulatory, clinical. About 26% of those were product development or engineering. And then we had a small sliver of manufacturing, and then about 11% were corporate or executives. So the majority were quality and regulatory. That survey, it covered a broad range of topics, and you asked about conclusions. So we'll talk about it in just a minute. Um, but I also want to say we actually I think we just closed our most recent survey as well. So we have about 600 this time, quality professionals that we have interviewed. So we're getting ready for next year. So that'll be coming up. We'll definitely let your audience know when that's out. As far as the conclusions, there were some interesting findings. And before I get to conclusions, one of the things that really stood out was that timing really matters. And to your point with Colombia, that's the thing that I noticed when I looked at the timelines between Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia. Just the speed at which you could expect to get through with Colombia was pretty mind-boggling compared to some of the others. I mean, it's almost an order of magnitude, isn't it? The difference. Um, so when we looked at the different classes, so class one, class two, class three, for class three device, um, on average, well, I don't know if it's really fair to take an average, but let's use percentages. The bulk, 47% of class three devices for the FDA took 3 to 5 years to get to market. So that's actually probably a little bit. I mean, that actually might even be a little fast compared to what I was expecting. About 23% of those expected, they were around 2 to 3 years. But the majority are expecting to take longer than 5 years. So if you can shave a year off of that,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you now have 20% faster to market. 20% is huge. So just timing matters, and we heard that from several different tiers, medtech professionals. As far as the different things that we heard, we another thing that we looked at was whether or not uh, these medical professionals were using, or what kind of tools they were using, whether they were using purpose-built solutions or just general purpose tools. It was about half and half. And when we looked at that, the ones who were not using purpose-built solutions, something that was specifically built for their industry, timing was affected as well. So that was interesting. Um, I'll kind of skip to the end as far as some the top four things that we saw happening. So as far as um, the things that we saw was a disconnect between management and quality, the actual quality department. So there's a disconnect as far as whether or not um, they were actually on target or excelling in quality. So management typically said, no, we're not doing well with quality. It was kind of like the majority of them. Whereas a lot of quality management said, we're doing pretty good. So there was a little bit of a disconnect there. So that was interesting, as something that to think about. Um, when we kind of did a few interviews with some different people as to why might that be the case. One of the thoughts was, well, management is thinking about two different things. The quality may be thinking how many kappas are open, how many kappas have been closed, whereas quality and the upper executives might be thinking more along the lines of something like, how fast are we getting to market? Have we produced more revenue, and what's the outlook look like? So that was one of the things that we noticed. Supplier management was another one. And um and I don't know, I love hearing from you too, Julio. I know you were on our podcast, and so when I think supplier management, that's one of the things that I love to hear about, as far as the Latin America and how you've seen some of those supplier, just because med tech companies are going to call it a supplier, whoever they are, but that partnership across those country lines. What have you seen as far as that management?
Well,
Is that something I'm allowed to ask?
no, no. It's a good question. I don't know the answer, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't get involved. We don't get involved in quality
yeah,
issues with our clients. They just ask us for SOPs, and that's it. I mean, and we're
yep.
a U.S. company, so we are not really. So no, I don't have an answer for that. To be honest with you, I'm sorry.
Well, so no, no, that's okay, and that's
Yeah,
okay. I just like to ask the question. I don't mean to put anyone
no,
on the spot. I'm
yeah,
supposed to be
yeah.
the one on the spot here. So,
You're
one
flipping
of
the coin. Anyway,
well, when I think supplier management, we're going to a remote world,
yes,
and
yeah,
that's inevitable. But when you talk about certain aspects of your suppliers, there's certain things that you need to be doing in person. And
yeah.
this is me a little bit selfishly, as a a world traveler, not necessarily by choice. My wife has turned me into one. She takes me different places, and
Okay,
that's wonderful. I'm very
yeah,
thankful for that.
yeah.
When you choose your suppliers, one of the things you need to think about is how close are they? How can I
Yeah.
get to them?
Mm.
Can I have a relationship with them? And so you don't necessarily think of a country, at least I don't necessarily think, is this country a place I want to go to for that supplier? But that actually plays into it, your relationship with those things. So that might be another thing to think about when you're thinking about your long
Yeah,
term suppliers.
that's a great point. That's a great point. And of course, we operating in Latin America, and one of the things from the get go, we started the company. We set it up as a U.S. corporation. We are a Florida-based company, and that's also to give our clients that level of trust that they're dealing with a local supplier. They're dealing with a U.S.
Yeah.
company. We're real people in the U.S. We're not some remote company in Colombia with a bank account with a Swift number that takes a whole page.
Right.
I mean, a whole page of wiring instructions. You don't know if you're gonna get your money. These people.
Yeah. No,
So
no.
yeah. So no, it's a great point. And we're that buffer between our clients and our research centers, not our research center, I mean the hospitals that we deal with are in our network of research centers. So they don't have to deal with foreign suppliers. So we make it easier for our clients in that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things that so supplier management, just in general, was one of the things that we saw. quite a few people really felt like was below average. So actually 75% felt like their supplier quality management program was below average or below average. So that was something to think about. And Yeah, it's just one of the things that you need to think about. Um, Another thing to think about. So one of the other issues with our, when with that we found in this survey was one of the one of the things that people experience is if you experience a warning letter, it may take 3 years to reach resolution for that. Now, I come from the quality regulatory side, so I think a lot about the quality. So that's one of the things that, again, uh, that uncertainty, and start tying it back to that word that you said, certainty that what you have is a quality product, what you have is something that what is going to meet your expectations. That's important in the quality world, because if you cut corners, if things don't work out the way you expect them to, and so forth, um, yeah, those warning letters can take a long time to resolve.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure. All right,
Yeah,
so basically, the issue of time is probably the issue that we can all help in Latin America, or the issue where Latin America can play a predominant role for the medtech industry, as you correctly found, and that's also it's been my experience. As usually, what I hear, I mean, time. How can we start this trial faster anywhere in Latin America? Sometimes I have conversation where I have to give them the whole my potential client the whole framework around the different countries so that they can understand where to go and where they can get their study approved faster. So yeah.
yeah,
The other thing that I am very thrilled about is your acquisition of smart trials.
smart
That
trial.
will
Yes,
also save time and effort in managing these smaller medical device early feasibility studies, which are different from pharma studies. So I think the partnership that we have and what we're putting together here is going to benefit the whole industry because we're going to solve one of their pain points, one of their problems, which is the time to take that takes a device to get to market.
yeah. Not just the time too, but like you said, the certainty.
The certainty, exactly.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. When
Yeah.
you have clinical trials spread over multiple locations, and you're trying to capture all that data, whether it's on paper or through, just however that's being captured, um, really a solution like Smart Trial is really the way to go as far as that electronic data capture. I mean, it will increase your certainty and your ability to just have a lot of more confidence in what you're actually performing. So
Yes, yes, and I guess now with the acquisition of Smart Trials, your survey may change a little bit, may add different questions, or right
yeah,
related to
yeah.
clinical research, because it's really a hot topic nowadays. The increase in demand that I've seen this year has been unprecedented.
I think something and I'm curious to see how it's changed. I remember one of the numbers from your articles actually was the increase what from 2012 to 2017 was like 94%
Yes,
increase.
something
Wasn't that
like that.
isn't that right?
Exactly.
And
Yes.
that's 5 years old,
Yeah,
so I don't.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, every week I get at least three new inquiries in our website about a new study in Latin America. So definitely there's an issue happening in the United States. There's an issue happening in Europe that is there's a bottleneck somehow. Probably also because of COVID. Probably because there is new investors. Who knows what fueling all this? But it's probably a combination of factors. And certainly Latin America has become a place
yeah,
to help fix this issue of timing,
yeah,
as you said,
exactly. I mean,
uncertainty.
that's it's funny. We think about the development of a medical device and how much a chunk of that clinical trial is the cost of developing that medical device. Some studies, I think it's not quite half the amount of cost, but in the historically it's been in the 30 to 40% range. I think that's
Yes,
the amount of money it takes to develop a medical device. to put it through clinical trial. Um, if I'm not mistaken, that some of the things I think I have been read from you though, are like 60% reduction in cost is for those
Yes,
clinical trials.
up to, yes, I would say that. Yeah,
Up to.
that's kind of accurate. Anywhere between 30 and 60%, I would say. I see, especially in Colombia, with the Colombian peso at a historic low versus the U.S. dollar,
Hmm.
and it's just really unbeatable to as a country. I mean, to buy services from a hospital in Colombia, you're gonna get a great bargain. It's the second most valued currency after Venezuela and Argentina. Venezuela, well, obvious reasons. Argentina is a country that is struggling so much to get ahead, and it's very
Yeah.
unstable in many ways, economically, politically, socially. But inflation in Venezuela and Argentina are just really, really difficult. It's just funny. You walk the streets of Colombia in Bogota, and there are people selling crafts on the streets with Venezuelan currency. They
Oh.
they sell hats and they sell purses. They make animals. You can buy
Oh, really?
currency. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
how bad it is. The issue with clinical research in Venezuela is interesting. I am involved with a hospital in Caracas, probably the largest private hospital in Venezuela. And we are doing a study with a interventional cardiologist, one of the top in Latin America. He's from Caracas, and he works at that hospital. And we are working on a couple of studies in Colombia. And he's a proctor of the sponsor for the study in Colombia. And we talk a lot about doing studies in Venezuela, but the issue is that Americans cannot travel to Venezuela. But Venezuela could be an ideal place for clinical research if Americans could get visas and travel to the country, because it's a country of over 45 million people, something like that. Colombia is 53 now, and it's a country that has a great infrastructure, private at least. The public infrastructure is gone. There's really no private. There's really no universal healthcare system or anything like that. It's all private. You have to have money. It's dollarized. So yeah, prices are probably not as cheap as Colombia, but it could represent great savings for companies. And eventually, the issue will be fixed. I mean, Americans will eventually be able to travel to Venezuela. And actually, the pioneer of early feasibility clinical research in Latin America was Venezuela, Dr.
Oh, really?
Conrado.
Yeah. Yeah.
Caracas, like 20 years ago.
When I was first thinking about this, first in human and some of the clinical trials, one of the issues that I kind of thought, well, what about recruitment? Is it truly representative of the same type of population you might see in America, whether it's diet based, things like that, and just the ability, the countries, really impressive as far as having not been there myself, just the things that I've read and the things I've learned about it. It's to a level where the same, very similar, different stratas of life, I guess, different
Yes,
tier, whether it's
yes.
diet or and so forth. So that kind of erased one of the biggest concerns in my mind when it came to clinicals, and actually was a big convincing factor,
Mm,
in my mind, that it would be
yes,
an appealing place to go.
exactly. Yes, yeah, yeah. Latin America is very Americanized nowadays, and in the hospital infrastructure, the way people practice medicine, and the lifestyle is very Americanized, and it's just like in the U.S. It's a mix of cultures. I mean,
Yeah.
countries like Argentina. I mean, probably the population mix is very similar to the United States,
Yeah.
very European influenced, and Colombia is a great mix. It's a little bit of everything. You have Italians, Germans, of course, Spanish. In Colombia, you have also Asian communities. You have Middle Eastern population. So it kind of is similar to the U.S. in a
Yeah.
way. And whites in the U.S. are becoming minority.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It's funny.
It just everything's cyclical. It's just kind of
Yeah,
the way it
yeah,
goes.
exactly, exactly.
So I'm curious about. So you heard kind of my personal anecdote at the beginning about maybe Colombia or whatever. I'm curious um, uh, if you could tell me your quick snippet as to why I should go to Colombia. Maybe not even necessarily from a clinical standpoint. I just having been there, a native yourself, I just love to
Yeah.
hear what you have to say about it real quick.
About what? Excuse me. About going to Colombia?
Yeah, just one of the okay, I'm just imagining I get off the plane and I'm going to the hospital, but maybe I want to do something
Oh,
else.
I see.
What do you recommend? What should I do first?
Oh, I see. I
On a
see.
personal note.
Yeah, on a personal note. Well, I if you go to Colombia, you have to visit Bogota. Is perhaps one of the largest metropolitan areas of Latin America, with Mexico City, with Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires. It's kind of at the same level.
Yeah.
You get out of the airport, and first of all, the first one of the best airports, if not the first. There's a recent survey on this. Is in Bogota. El Dorado Airport is perhaps the best airport in Latin America right now. And that's a lot to say, but it's brand new, just impressive airport. And the highway that you see is really, really impressive. It's not, I mean, you feel that you are not in a banana republic. You feel that you are in a real country, right?
Right.
Yeah, and of course, Bogota is the capital city, and Bogota is a place of about over 10 million people. It's a large metropolitan area,
Wow.
and it has one of the best hospitals in Latin America. And the reason for that is because the geographic location of the country is kind of privileged, because it's the first country in South America, so it everybody from the Caribbean travels to Colombia for medical care, for advanced medical care. Everybody from Central America, Panama, Costa Rica, Honduras, Nicaragua, they either choose to go to Mexico or Colombia, right? And
Yeah.
everybody from the south, everybody from Ecuador, Peru. Well, not so much Peru, but unless you're in the northern part of Peru, but Ecuador, Bolivia, they all travel to Colombia for medical care. So yeah, it's I would say Bogota, Medellin is a fascinating city, very metropolitan, very multicultural, and the other city that is up and coming is perhaps the fastest growing city in Colombia, probably one of the fastest growing cities in Latin America, is Barranquilla. Barranquilla is the largest city in the whole Caribbean basin after Miami. That's a fact that not many
Yeah.
people know about.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a city of about 2.5, 3 million people, but the area of influence of Barranquilla is about 10 million people because it covers the whole Caribbean coast. It's the largest metropolitan area next to, and it's right in the middle. Santa Marta is a smaller city towards the north, and Cartagena, which everybody knows about, is towards the south. But Barranquilla is the center, the economic center of the Colombian Caribbean coast, and has a large number of hospitals. I would say probably there are about at least 10 high complexity hospitals in the city. So patient recruitment is great.
That's fantastic. Um, community is one of the things that I don't think about. I don't know that we think a whole lot about in medtech. Just the community in general.
Yeah.
The medtech itself is kind of a small industry, but if you go to some place that's, I don't know, if you try to go to the Mayo Clinic or wherever else where you're not, listened to, and perhaps at whatever level you're at, what I'm curious about is, the different communities within those hospitals and the ability to have a better relationship with those. Um, you're kind of you work between the U.S. and directly with the hospital, so I'm sure you see and manage a lot of that relationship. But um, that's one of the things that I'm interested in learning a little bit more about too in the future.
Yes,
So
yes, yes,
yeah,
exactly. And I mean, I am always very thrilled about the possibilities of bringing your technology to Latin America. There are a lot of there are a few hubs of innovation in the region, and medical devices are increasingly, now that we can use software as a medical device, you
yeah,
find a lot more entrepreneurs trying to do something in this area. So it's a slowly growing industry in Latin America. I would say Brazil, Colombia, Argentina. I mean, the top five countries in the region have the need of a software like the Green Light Guru offers, a quality management system. So yeah, it would be fantastic to translate the software to Spanish. I don't know if you guys have plans to do that, but that's a growing area.
That's fantastic feedback. Yeah, that's a really good point. I don't know that we do at the moment, but I need to check with my product team. I should probably keep my mouth shut until I know for sure. But though, like I said, if and I'll send a link to that state of 2022 report, and then eventually when we have our state of 2023 report released, we can definitely send that your way as well. But one of the things that we saw that I already mentioned was just the the companies that don't use those specific tools to help them get to market, whether it's something like Greenlight Guru or Smart Trial for their clinical trials. They're moving slower than the ones who are using those purpose built tools. And yeah, uh, you know, um, I look at it kind of like, as a mechanical engineer, if I look back at my past, I I had the privilege to work at a company where it was 100-year-old company. It was in the steel industry before I came to medtech. We had four different ways of keeping our drawings. We had them on paper that I can't remember, it's A2, just the massive pieces of paper that people had hand drawn, which is fantastic. We had microfilm, we had NX ideas, and then we had SolidWorks. Guys like me are like, why are we not using SolidWorks for everything? Look, I can do what you do 4 days in 5 minutes. And it's just kind of the way the world, it's always changing. And the companies that embrace that change, they just move faster. So,
Totally agree.
yeah,
All right, Etienne, we're close to the end of the show. Thank you so much for being here. It was a delightful conversation. I look forward to being in touch.
yeah, fantastic, great talking to you, Julio.
Bye bye. Thank you.
All right,
Take care.
take care.